Imagine coming home after a really long, just exhausting day. You walk through your front door, reach out in the dark to drop your keys on the hall table,
Oh,
exactly where you always do.
right. Muscle memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But your hand just hits empty air. The table is gone.
Oh, no.
Yeah. You stumble forward to turn on a lamp, and you crack your shin violently against a heavy wooden coffee table that was, frankly, definitely not in the middle of the room this morning.
Ouch.
Someone has completely rearranged the furniture in the dark. It is disorienting. It hurts. And more than anything, it makes you feel entirely out of control of your own environment.
It's a terrible feeling.
It really is. And that feeling, that fumbling in the dark when everything shifts beneath your feet, that is exactly what Dr. Spencer Johnson captured in a deceptively simple, absolutely brilliant framework called Who Moved My Cheese?
It really is brilliant. And we have to establish the stakes right up front for this because on its surface, I mean, this is a very brief parable about mice running through a maze.
Right, it sounds like a children's book.
It totally does. But if you read the foreword by Dr. Ken Blanchard, you quickly realize the real-world weight of this material. This short story has quite literally saved major corporate mergers from collapsing.
Wow.
Yeah, and it has rescued marriages. And it does that not by, giving you a step-by-step checklist or something. It does it by fundamentally shifting how you perceive and react to loss and disruption.
Which is huge.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
takes the terrifying ambiguity of change and turns it into a highly visible, manageable dynamic.
Which is exactly our mission for you, the listener. Today, we are doing a deep dive into this framework because, let's face it, the furniture is constantly being rearranged right now.
Constantly.
Whether you are prepping for a massive artificial intelligence shift that threatens your current industry, or, trying to navigate suddenly complicated family dynamics, or you are just exhausted by the sheer overwhelm of modern life.
Which I think is most people.
Right. This model gives you a way to understand your own reactions. So we're going to use the fable to map out adult psychology, look at the mechanisms of why we get so stuck, and explore how real people, from executives to parents, have used this exact framework to break free of their own paralysis.
And to understand the psychology, we first have to understand the map the author draws for us. There are two core metaphors here. First, there is the cheese.
The all-important cheese.
Yes. Cheese represents whatever it is you believe will make you happy or secure. So
Yeah.
that could be a high-paying job, a loving partner, public recognition, or just a quiet, stable routine.
Whatever you're chasing.
Exactly. And then there's the maze. The maze is the environment where you hunt for the cheese. It's your company, your local community, your family structure, or even your own internal belief system.
And inside this maze, we have our four guides. The author gives us two mice named Sniff and Scurry.
I love those names.
They're great, right. And because they're mice, they operate on very basic, highly efficient instincts. Sniff is great at noticing tiny changes in the environment early on.
Always sniffing the air.
Yeah. And Scurry is the muscle. He has the instinct to just put his head down and take immediate action. They don't have complex philosophies. They just sniff and scurry.
But sharing the maze with them are two little people. They're these tiny beings named hem and haw.
Like hemming and hawing.
Exactly, yeah. They are the same size as the mice, but they possess big, complex human brains. And this is where the mirror is held up to us.
There we go.
Hem and haw's brains are filled with deep emotional attachments, sophisticated belief systems, and historical memory. Now, initially, all four of these characters are highly successful.
They figure it out.
They do. After a lot of trial and error, they all discover a massive, seemingly endless supply of their absolute favorite cheeses at a location called Cheese Station C.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Station C is where everything goes wrong, specifically for the humans.
Oh, absolutely.
Because finding the mother lode changes hem and haw, but it doesn't change the mice. Every single morning, Sniff and Scurry wake up early, run the maze, arrive at Station C, take off their running shoes, tie the laces together, and hang them around their necks.
They keep them ready.
Yes. They are currently eating the cheese, but they are fully prepared to run again at a moment's notice. It's like our simple, action-oriented mouse brain.
Right.
But hem and haw, on the other hand, start acting exactly like we do when we hit a comfortable plateau in life. Our overthinking little person brain takes over. They move their literal houses to be closer to the cheese.
They get comfortable.
Way too comfortable. They stop wearing running shoes entirely and buy cozy slippers. They even paint a mural on the wall that says, "Having cheese makes you happy." They form an entire identity around the fact that they are the owners of this cheese.
What's fascinating here is that identity shift. That is the trap. The human brain is biologically wired to conserve energy, you know? When you are in the maze, your brain is burning a massive amount of calories, scanning for threats, looking for patterns, just trying to survive.
It's exhausting.
It is. But once Hem and Haw find Station C, their brains register a reliable source of reward and effectively switch off the threat detection systems.
Just power them down completely.
Yeah. And this biological efficiency rapidly devolves into psychological entitlement. They stop paying attention to the environment because they assume the environment is permanent.
Which is never true.
Never. It looks like arrogance. From the outside, they start saying things like, we deserve this cheese. But internally, it's just a complex brain running on a very dangerous autopilot.
And because they are on autopilot, they don't notice the reality of what's happening. The cheese is actually getting older.
It's getting stale.
Yeah, it's getting a little moldy. The pile is subtly shrinking. Which brings us to the inevitable crisis. One morning, they show up to Station C, and the room is completely empty.
It's just gone.
The cheese is gone. Now, the mice, Sniff and Scurry, aren't surprised at all. They had noticed the subtle daily changes. So without a second of hesitation or existential dread, they grab the running shoes from around their necks, lace them up, and sprint back into the dark maze to find a new supply.
But Hem and Haw suffer a complete psychological collapse.
Total meltdown.
Completely. They are paralyzed. Hem turns red, puts his hands on his hips, and starts screaming, "It's not fair! Who moved my cheese?"
As someone stole from him.
Exactly. He is acting under the delusion that if he is angry enough and loud enough, the universe will be forced to recognize the injustice and put the cheese back.
It's such a perfect depiction of the grievance loop. There's this great real-world example in the source material about Charlie Jones.
Oh, the broadcaster, yes.
Right, he was a highly respected sports broadcaster for NBC. He had spent years mastering the track and field beat, covering the Olympics. That was his cheese Station C. He felt incredibly secure and valued.
He had his slippers on.
He absolutely had his slippers on. But then, entirely out of the blue, his boss moves him off track and field and assigns him to cover swimming and diving for the next Olympics.
Wow. Just a total shift.
Yeah, and Charlie was furious. He didn't know the swimmers. He didn't know the nuances of the sport. He felt humiliated and betrayed. And instead of learning the new sport, he let his anger bleed into his broadcasts.
He was sitting in the empty room.
Exactly like him, furious that someone moved his cheese.
Right. Charlie felt entitled to his specific role because, well, he hadn't done anything to lose it. The change was imposed on him. And it wasn't until he actually heard this parable that the spell broke.
It clicked for him.
It did. He realized, wait, my boss just moved my cheese. That simple phrasing depersonalized the slight. It wasn't a grand cosmic injustice anymore.
It was just a shift in the maze.
Exactly. That realization allowed him to drop the grievance, actually study swimming, and the renewed energy he found eventually led to him being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Broadcasters Alley.
Okay, I have to push back on Charlie's initial reaction, though, and on Ham's reaction.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because when you lose a major client, or a pandemic shuts down your industry, or your boss completely upends your job description, isn't it actually a highly rational human response to demand to know why?
You mean trying to understand the situation?
Yeah. If a system fails, don't we have a professional and intellectual obligation to do a root cause analysis? You can't just blindly run back into the maze without understanding who moved the cheese and how to prevent it, right?
You know, you are touching on exactly what makes Hem so relatable. In a stable, predictable environment, root cause analysis is a vital human skill.
Right, like finding a bug in the code.
Exactly. If a machine breaks on an assembly line, you absolutely need to figure out why. But the parable is highlighting a very specific psychological trap that occurs during times of sudden, irreversible disruption.
The operative word being irreversible.
Yes. When the landscape shifts fundamentally, your analytical brain can actually become your worst enemy. Hem's analysis isn't aimed at adapting. It is entirely aimed at establishing blame.
Oh, that's a huge distinction.
It is. He is analyzing the situation purely to construct a rigid belief system of victimhood. He believes that because he didn't cause the problem, he shouldn't have to participate in the solution.
Ah, I love that. Think of Hen's reaction like a severe muscle cramp.
Oh, like how so?
Well, when your body experiences a sudden trauma or a strange movement, your muscles will seize up and cramp to protect the joint from moving. It's a defense
That
mechanism.
makes sense.
But if you stay locked in that cramp, the tension actually starts causing tissue damage. Hem's entitlement is a psychological muscle cramp.
Wow, yes.
He has locked his brain into this rigid state of, this is unfair, to protect his ego from the pain of the unknown. But the longer he stays cramped up in that empty room, the closer he gets to actually starving.
He has to unfreeze.
Right. To survive, he has to force himself to stretch, to move, even though it hurts.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. And while Hem stays cramped, refusing to move, his friend Ha slowly starts to stretch. Ha looks at the two of them, weak, hungry, and stubbornly waiting for yesterday to return, and Ha does the one thing that can break a victimhood complex.
He laughs at himself.
Yes, the laughter is everything.
It really is.
Yeah.
He realizes how utterly ridiculous they look, taking themselves so seriously while starving in an empty room. And in that moment of self-awareness, Ha admits a hard truth he had been suppressing.
About the old cheese.
Yeah. He realizes the old cheese didn't actually vanish overnight by magic. It had been getting stale. It had been shrinking all along, but his fear made him ignore the signs.
Which is a profound observation on human denial. Why do we ignore the mold on the cheese? Because acknowledging the decay means we have to admit that a transition is necessary.
And transitions are scary.
Terrifying. It means venturing back into the dark maze. We often prefer the slow, familiar pain of a degrading situation over the sharp, sudden terror of stepping into the unknown.
But Ha decides to face the terror. And as he is preparing to enter the maze alone, leaving Hem behind, he writes a question on the wall that is arguably the thesis of the entire deep dive.
It's such a powerful question.
He writes, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" It's such a clarifying filter. And to physically force his tired legs to move into those dark corridors, Ha employs a highly effective psychological mechanism.
Visualization.
Exactly. He doesn't just weakly hope things get better. He paints a vividly realistic picture in his mind. He imagines himself sitting in the middle of a massive pile of fresh cheddar and brie.
Just surrounds himself with it mentally.
Yeah, he imagines the smell, the texture, the taste. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like driving a car. Staring obsessively in the rearview mirror at the old cheese will inevitably cause you to crash. You have to look through the windshield to navigate toward the new cheese.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the neuroscience behind why that visualization works is fascinating.
What's happening in his brain?
Well, when Ha creates that vivid mental image, his brain begins to release dopamine. That's the neurotransmitter associated with motivation and reward anticipation.
So he's chemically changing his state.
Exactly. He is literally generating a chemical pull toward the future that is stronger than the fear pushing him backward. And this leads to Ha's biggest breakthrough.
What happens?
As he is jogging down these dark, completely unfamiliar corridors, long before he actually finds any new cheese, he suddenly realizes he feels fantastic, he feels invigorated. He writes on the wall, "When you move beyond your fear, you feel free."
He discovers that the dread of the empty room was actually much worse than the reality of the maze.
Anticipation of pain is worse than the pain.
Right. We spend so much time analyzing the fear. But Ha proves that the physical act of moving in a new direction, of reclaiming your agency, is the actual antidote to fear. Movement cures the paralysis.
And Ha realizes he needs to document this shift in his worldview. He treats the walls of the maze like a canvas, leaving a trail of insights.
The handwriting on the wall.
Right. These graffiti messages are breadcrumbs for him in case his friend ever decides to leave the empty room. But they also serve to solidify Ha's own new identity.
And those messages on the wall are where the rubber really meets the road for us. The source material outlines several incredible examples of how real professionals and families applied Ha's graffiti to their lives.
Oh, I love these examples.
They're so practical. For instance, Ha writes on the wall, "Smell the cheese often so you know when it is getting old." There is a story about a man named Nathan who ran his family's local retail business.
Oh, the hardware store, right?
Yeah, a retail shop. When massive discount mega stores started moving into town, Nathan's family acted exactly like him. They ignored the threat.
They didn't adapt.
Not at all. They didn't adapt their inventory or their customer service model. They just watched their sales plummet.
And the crucial mechanism there isn't just that Nathan's family lacked business acumen. It's that they were bound by sunk cost and identity.
It was personal for them.
Very. To change the store's model would feel like invalidating the legacy of the grandfather who built it. They were so attached to the old cheese of their historical identity that they willfully ignored the mold growing on their balance sheet.
We see an even bigger example with the encyclopedia company. This is a classic case of corporate hem syndrome.
Oh, this one is mind-blowing.
It really is. This company had made all its money through a massive, highly trained, very expensive door-to-door sales force. That was their golden cheese.
And they were very successful at it.
Very. But eventually, an innovator suggests putting the entire encyclopedia on a single computer disk. It would be drastically cheaper for the consumer and infinitely easier to update.
But the executives at the encyclopedia company violently resisted the idea.
Which seems crazy in hindsight.
It does, but why did they do it? Because the CD-ROM didn't just threaten their competitors, it cannibalized their own structure. If they embraced the disk, what would they do with thousands of door-to-door salespeople?
They'd have to fire them or retrain them.
Exactly. They chose to protect their comfortable structure rather than their actual mission of distributing knowledge. As Haw wrote on the wall, old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese.
But the market doesn't care about your old beliefs.
Not at all. The executives refused to change their beliefs, but competitors adopted the CD-ROM, and the door-to-door encyclopedia business was essentially wiped off the map.
But the cheese isn't always a business model or a revenue stream. That's what makes this framework so versatile. There's a discussion between two people, Elaine and Corey, who realize that old cheese can actually be toxic relationship dynamics.
This was a huge light bulb moment.
Yeah, Corey has this profound realization that finding new cheese doesn't necessarily mean leaving your spouse to find a new partner.
Right, you don't have to throw the whole relationship away.
Exactly. Often the new cheese is letting go of moldy old behaviors. The chronic arguing, the passive aggression, the historical resentments, and adopting a completely new way of interacting with the exact same person. The relationship itself is the maze. The behavior is the cheese.
We also see how deeply this affects parenting and personal identity. There's a story of a woman named Becky. She talks about moving her family from Illinois to Vermont.
A huge move for a kid.
Huge. Her teenage son was devastated and furious because he was a star swimmer, and his new high school in Vermont didn't even have a swimming pool.
Oh man, that's tough.
He spent months acting like him, sulking in his room, furious that his swimming cheese had been taken away. He was gripping that identity so tightly.
Which teenagers do.
Totally. But eventually, he had to let the swimmer identity go. Once he did, he looked around his new environment, saw the Vermont mountains, and tried skiing.
And he loved it.
He fell in love with it. He eventually skied competitively in college. He found incredible new cheese, but the prerequisite was grieving and releasing the old.
I see how this works on an individual level. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the reality of how human beings operate in groups, and I have a major question.
Let's hear it.
It is one thing to have this brave epiphany when you're sitting alone in your kitchen. But how do you actually avoid the hem trap when you're dealing with the immense gravity of peer pressure?
Group dynamics are tough.
They are. What if your entire department at work or your entire extended family is fiercely dedicated to staying in the empty room, complaining about how unfair everything is?
Yeah.
If you try to put on your running shoes, they actively try to pull you back so you don't make them look bad.
Yeah.
How does this framework survive social pressure?
This raises an important question, and it's the exact friction point of organizational change. In almost any group, when a major shift happens, a new software system, a new management structure, the default social currency is resistance.
It's cool to hate the new thing.
Exactly. People will often publicly agree that the new initiative is a terrible idea simply to look smart to their colleagues. It is a shared ego defense. But as a manager named Michael points out in the text, when an entire team reads this story and adopts the cheese language, it effectively breaks that social gravity.
Because it removes the personal attack. You aren't calling your coworkers stubborn or obsolete.
Exactly. You give the group a shared, non-threatening vocabulary. Instead of bonding over grievances, people start catching themselves and asking, wait, are we just being hem right now?
Oh, that's brilliant.
Because once a group understands the fable, nobody wants to be him. The social pressure flips.
Nobody wants to be the guy in slippers.
Nobody wants to be the guy sitting in the dark room wearing slippers, stubbornly demanding that the universe cater to his feelings while everyone else is out navigating the maze and finding new opportunities. The shared language diffuses the ego defense and replaces the culture of fear with a culture of collective agility.
And agility is exactly what delivers the ultimate payoff for Haw. After fully embracing the journey, he finally rounds a corner and discovers Cheese Station N.
The promised land.
He's absolutely stunned. It is the largest, most vibrant supply of cheese he has ever seen in his life, filled with exotic varieties he didn't even know existed. And when he walks in, who was already there? Sniff and Scurry.
With their fat little bellies.
with fat little bellies. They've obviously been enjoying the new cheese for quite some time because they never paused to analyze the unfairness of losing the old cheese.
But the most important part of the ending isn't the abundance of Station N. It's how Haw behaves once he gets there.
Right, he doesn't repeat his mistake.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't take off his running shoes. He doesn't move his house. He has fundamentally transformed. He realizes that the illusion of permanence was his greatest enemy.
The cheese will always move eventually.
Exactly. So even though he is surrounded by more cheese than he could ever eat, he routinely goes out into the maze to map new areas. He constantly inspects his current supply for mold. He has learned to anticipate change, not fear it.
So what does this all mean? The challenge of this deep dive is deeply personal for you, the listener. It requires you to look at the map of your own life and ask the hard questions.
The really hard questions.
Where are you currently sitting in an empty room, furious at the dark, waiting for an old job, an old relationship, or an old version of yourself to magically reappear? Where are you wasting your energy analyzing the injustice of the situation instead of lacing up your running shoes?
Because the transition from paralysis to agility begins the moment you stop asking, who moved my cheese? And start asking yourself, what did I do right now if I weren't afraid?
And that leads us to a final provocative thought to carry with you. Haw finds incredible success at Station N, but he purposefully keeps venturing back into the dark corridors.
He stays active.
He does. And it makes you realize that the ultimate goal of the maze isn't actually the new cheese. Finding a new job or a new routine is great, but that cheese will eventually disappear too. The predictability is an illusion.
Always.
The true goal is fundamentally changing who you are. If you can let go of your entitlement, if you realize that taking action is the only true cure for anxiety, you undergo a permanent upgrade. You become someone who isn't terrified of the dark corners anymore.
You trust yourself.
Exactly. You realize that you have the internal software to handle whatever the maze throws at you. So the next time you walk into that dark room and find that the universe has completely rearranged the furniture, you won't stand there shouting at the empty space. You'll just smile, turn on the light, and start exploring your new living room.